What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another featured company live cast right here on the ADOM Facebook page. Always a pleasure being with you here. A new week and another great company. So very excited to be spending the next 30 minutes with you. Honored to have Jeff Clark, who is the founder of Practice Analytics, with us. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. So what we're going to do, everybody, like we have been doing with these featured company focus, is that Jeff's got some really exciting information to share, some newer features from Practice Analytics that he's going to go over. And like always, any questions that you have for Jeff, be sure to go ahead and put those in the comments thread, and I will make sure that I answer those. All right, Jeff, as we get started, love to have you share maybe just a little bit about yourself and Practice Analytics. And as you know, a big dental manager audience here. So I'm sure they'd love to learn a little bit more about yourself and the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody needs to know I'm a nerd. I love data. I love information. Information always tells a story, and there's tons of information inside your practice management systems. And so we at Practice Analytics want to take advantage of that information. My background, I actually worked for a group dental practice and have been in dentistry for at this point 15, 18 years. And while I was there, I understand your pain, right? As an office manager, you're wearing so many hats and doing so many things, so busy. What we want to do at Practice Analytics is give some tools to be able to make your lives easier, identify opportunities throughout the practice, help hold your team accountable, and do it in a very simplistic way so that we can engage everybody in the office, your front office team, your hygienist, the doctor, everybody, so that they can see where there's opportunity. So I love information. I love data. I want to be able to help offices really grow organically because there's so many patients coming in the doors, and it's so easy to have patients slip through the cracks, whether they're out of your control or in your control. We want to be able to help you guys succeed. And really, ultimately, it's about your patient care and providing the best possible patient care. And our numbers, or the numbers that you use to manage your practice, really just become a proxy for understanding how are we doing in terms of taking care of our patients.
Yeah, and as you know, Jeff, in this, it would be nice to say post-COVID world, although we're right in the middle of it still. There's been a lot of talk about hygiene and hygiene recall, and some of the time that was lost, certainly when a lot of the practices were shut down. And I know you wanted to share with everybody today, really exciting, this hygiene tool. So I'd love to have you kind of get into that, and then the questions that I think people will want the answers to.
Fantastic. So our hygiene tool really focuses in on this ReCare program, right? You look at hygiene really is, patients should be coming in at least every 6 months, twice a year. Some patients come in more frequently than that, and if they're in perio programs, perio maintenance. And so when we look at this recall program, really what we want to do is help make sure that that's happening. And the challenge here, especially COVID is just torn our schedules apart. It has made it a situation where patients are all over the place, and we're trying to catch up. And how do we manage that? And so our hygiene tool is going to help organize that information, make sure patients aren't slipping through the cracks, make it really easy for you to be able to see where those opportunities are, whether it's on the ReCare side. It could be, checking to see if our patients are actually coming back in, what's happening with the perio program. So we want to be able to take this hygiene program and really keep a good eye on it in a really simplistic way, and make it effective so that you can allow the hygiene program to be the gateway to your practice, right? The interesting thing is that when you talk to a doctor, you'll oftentimes get the feeling that they think that they have the best relationship with the patient. And in reality, it's the hygienists. The hygienists are the ones that spend the most time with patients. They have that relationship that really is I think the most powerful relationship in the office. So we want to be able to help that hygiene program grow and be successful and help take care of patients.
Yeah, and I think what's so cool about companies like yours is that you guys have access to all this cool data, right? So not only does the practice have access to their individual data, but you guys get to see that at a macro level in regards to all of the customers and practices that you serve.
Yes.
So specifically to hygiene, What is something or a metric or something that you guys have seen that you really like to hone in on, that you find? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to look at the hygiene business and things like that. But maybe what is one or two things that you guys see that a lot of your customers are really benefiting from?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the two most important things are one, recall rate or reappointment rate. Are we getting our patients back on the books, right? Are they walking out the door with their next appointment in hand? And that's important because if we can get them on the books now, they're more likely to stay on the books in the future. So ReCare, our recall rate, reappointment rate, there's different names for it, but we call it recall rate. Number two is our retention rate. And the retention is measuring how well we're getting our patients back in the door. Are they coming back in a timely manner? And retention right now, post-COVID, is all over the place. But really, the idea here is we want to make sure that our patients are coming in as close to 6 months as possible. We can measure that to be able to say, okay, are they getting stretched out? Because if you take our patients and all of a sudden you're starting to stretch them out between 8, 10, 12 months in between hygiene appointments, that means that you're missing out on several opportunities. Number one, to be able to diagnose anything that's happening in the mouth. Number two, to stay on top of your ReCare to make sure that the mouth stays healthy. And so being able to look at our recall rate and our retention, those are two huge ones that will help really make sure that hygiene practice stays stable, is growing, and everybody's busy.
Perfect. Okay, so you identify those two big things are super important, and then as you know, I think one of the other nice things about having data and a lot of these analytics is building an accountability program, right? So you see what it is, but execution is everything. And so, can you talk a little bit about how you guys help practices, and I think more importantly, keeping the hygienist team accountable to a lot of these numbers and data that they're learning about?
Oh, absolutely. So accountability is huge. And we have a saying here at Practice Analytics of where performance is measured, performance improves. So what we can do is you got to put the measurements in place, and we have to engage the hygienist so that they know what they're being measured against. So if you look at something like recall rate, how well you're getting your patients reappointed. It's really interesting because when I talk to, and I'll give you an example, we had a practice who we started having conversations with them, talking to them about how to use Practice Analytics, and the team thought that they were fantastic at recall. Well, yeah, we get everybody back on the books, right? Once we actually get the data in there and start reading the data, most offices would say, yeah, 95%, 90% of our patients get reappointed. We go in there and we look at it, and it's closer to about 75%. So a quarter of our patients are not getting rebooked, and that presents a challenge on multiple levels. But being able to have the hygienist know that, hey, I'm responsible for making sure that the patients that I see get put back on the books. If I can get them back on the books, then there's the higher likelihood that they are going to come back in. And so creating that accountability so that they can see what they're being measured against, they can see who the patients are that they are responsible for, that's going to drive that level of accountability. And I'll tell you, almost everybody, once they start to see that they're being held accountable for something, they're going to take themselves to the next level. They're going to improve. And if they don't, then it makes you probably ask the question, is this the right person for our patients? Is this who we want to have taking care of our patients? And so it really becomes very powerful.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I think about data in the dental practice and with what you're talking about, there's always that what people think the rate is, right? Oh yeah, every 8 to 9 of my patients are coming back in, and then when they actually see the numbers, especially with I could not believe, and I know you guys see this on a weekly basis, that it seemed like for so long, a lot of practices really felt like a good majority of their patients came back. And I don't know what the national average is now, Jeff, but at one time, it was really only between 25 and 30%, which blew my mind when I literally started to look at the data, which that's really where the answers are. But it is pretty fascinating when I think they actually see what the numbers look like. It really changes people's behavior.
It really does. It's when they know that they're being held accountable, all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, I thought that patient was coming in. I'm going to give them a call. I'm going to text them, right? Again, the hygienist has that powerful relationship. And so being able to call on that person to say, hey, listen, we didn't get you on the schedule. Let's get you back on, just so we can guarantee a spot for you and make sure that you can get in timely, right? That becomes very powerful, very helpful. And yeah, absolutely.
Now, how are a lot of the practices that you guys are working with and the tools you're providing? What are some of the things that they're doing? You know, you hear the word catch up, right, during this COVID shutdown. Like, how can we get caught back up, and how can we use a lot of this information to help us do that?
Yeah. So the nice thing is, in a tool like Practice Analytics, we are identifying those patients who are slipping through, right? Ones that are past due, ones that have fallen off the schedule, and we can identify who they are. Now, the question is how, especially right now, how do we manage that? Do we try and catch up and squeeze everybody in? And I hear some of the offices have done that. They've expanded hours, trying to catch up for all those patients that have fell off during the shutdown. And I think that's an option, right? The other option is, do we just start to squeeze people in and catch them up over a longer period of time? Right. And there's benefits and challenges with both, right? When you squeeze everybody in, that ends up creating a peak in your recare program, and after every peak, there's a valley, right? And so I've seen a lot of practices heading into October and November where they're looking out under their hygiene schedule, and there are a lot of holes. And that corresponds with what happened 6 months prior, right? We didn't get to see those patients. If we brought them in a couple months later, then they're not going to be due until after the first of the year. And so squeezing them in can be challenging from that perspective. Pushing them out a little bit further, while it's painful because you're sacrificing your patient care and lengthening that time in between appointments, it's going to help normalize the office and help manage that recare program. And it's not great right now, but eventually it'll smooth itself out and things will go back to normal and feel like you're in control.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm really liking about these featured company live casts is that having you share some success stories, right? There's always that element of anytime a practice, as you know, tries a new product or service, there's always that, what am I going to get out of it? What's the return on it? And I think you and I can both agree that it doesn't take long when you start to look at the data in your practice, especially if you're a practice owner, dental manager, to start to realize the positive implications that you can have by using this data to your advantage. But what are some of the things that you guys have been hearing these last couple of months with like newer customers, like once they start to incorporate a lot of the tools, particularly this hygiene tool, into their practice? Just love to have you share some real life feedback from customers.
Yeah, as we engage with customers, we want to provide training and get them really in the tool and comfortable with the information that's there so that they can start acting against it. I think the initial reaction in a lot of cases is surprise because the numbers are not what they thought they were. Right. Then they start to see it and be like, oh man. And within 2 months, all of a sudden their recall rate goes from 75% up to 90%, and they're getting everybody back on the schedule. The success really is being able to quickly identify who those patients are that are slipping through the cracks, and then doing something about it and being able to engage them to get them back on the schedule quickly, and keep everything busy and healthy.
Yeah, and what are some of the other? I know you mentioned two of those main pieces of data that people are looking at, like recare appointment and things like that. What are some of the other pieces of the platform that a lot of like hygiene teams are using to help them be more productive?
Yeah, I love the hygiene program because it's very prescriptive, right? We know from the ADA what hygienists should be doing, right? They should be doing prophies. There should be some portion of patients that are perio. And the perio program's really amazing because it's very specific around who should be diagnosed with perio. Right. One tool that we have built in is looking at not only the perio rate and how much of our hygiene production is perio related, but we actually go in deeper and start to look at the perio diagnosis rate, which is scanning through the perio chart and looking for patients who are more likely to have periodontal disease based on the chart information. Yeah. And that's really interesting because I've seen practices where there is clearly some underdiagnosis happening with periodontal disease. And so we can identify that. And at the very least, we're going to be able to help identify who those patients are that have potential issues, and then allow the team to be able to have a chart audit, look through that, make sure that our approach is really meeting the standard of care related to perio, and that becomes very powerful in terms of being able to make sure that the perio needs are being met, because there's a lot of patients who are falling into this category, especially as they get older. You have a lot of opportunity there. The other measure that is interesting and that can have an impact directly on your production is something like our fluoride rate. So fluoride rate is something that I think fluoride should be given to all patients, especially if they have restorative work in the mouth already. It's going to help protect that. There's been documentation around that, and papers have been written about that. And so being able to monitor how often patients are getting fluoride helps us understand really, again, the health of the hygiene program. Are these patients getting preventive care? And are we educating our patients on the importance of something like fluoride so that it can help in their long-term oral health?
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned perio. And, as you know, Jeff, all of us in dentistry, although we didn't want it to be a pandemic that raised the attention of a lot of our patients, but it does feel like more and more patients through all of this are realizing just how important their health is, and more importantly, their oral health. And although we know in dentistry, we have been talking about the importance of the oral systemic link for many, many years, it just didn't seem to click with patients. And so I think it's so relevant what you're bringing up today, talking about the health of the hygiene program and using the data, or more importantly, more specific tools, like you mentioned, as far as really understanding the patients that need perio. And it just feels like, Jeff, that the conversations right now with patients, are that much more important. And so I think, to your point, having those lists of patients, knowing who is diagnosed, who wasn't, who needs help, it's encouraging. I think it's encouraging for the practices to know that they have these tools.
Yeah, and there are several tools out there. Really, you got to have something that's going to help you. And a lot of you are on Dentrix, Eaglesoft. There are a lot of reports in there. I think Eaglesoft has like 266 reports that you can pull. We got to make it simple and easy so that you can be able to identify those opportunities quickly, get on top of them, and make it so that it's not overwhelming for the team to be able to use that information in their day-to-day. So try and make it easy and simple.
Absolutely. All right. So since we have a lot of dental managers watching, hopefully them, and maybe they brought in some of their hygienists or what have you, but specifically, when you think about practice analytics and the tools that you have available, talk a little bit about how a dental manager can use this, right? As they're working together. I mean, we know that so many of the ADOM members take all aspects of their business seriously, right? And so, like, they do such a great job of, building that bond between the clinical team and their team up front and all of that stuff or whatever. So I'd love to have you share, kind of in that context, this platform with, dental managers and how you see them using it to their benefit.
Yeah, listen, it's all about simplification. I know the pain and the challenge that comes with managing an office. And so being able to make your life just simpler by taking the information, narrowing it down to really what matters, because you can get caught up in a lot of different information, a lot of different data, and it can oftentimes be overwhelming. We call it analysis paralysis. Yep. Where you're just inundated with information. And so being able to really get down to what drives your practice, and you have your hygiene business, which is very different from your restorative business. Yep. And so being able to separate those two is important. But as we look at hygiene as an office manager, really you have two major levers that you get to pull. Number one is your schedule and making sure that the hygienists are busy. So we want to be able to see if they are busy. And then number two, how are they doing clinically? Are they maximizing everything that they should be doing inside those appointments, right? Are they doing x-rays and then taking advantage of FMX versus just doing bite wings? Are we looking at offering perio or fluoride? Are we on top of perio? There are so many things that as a manager, I have my hand on everything. Mm-hmm. And to be able to take some of that pressure off, put accountability on the hygiene team to be able to perform well, have them engaged in their own success, and then being able to watch that and monitor that quickly and make adjustments along the way. It's all about simplification, making your lives easier, and being able to have a way to do that without being totally overwhelmed.
Well, and as you know, Jeff, in a lot of cases, the practice owner comes to the office manager and asks them, that they've got their pulse in the business, right? Like whether it be the financial side or, like you mentioned in this case here, the health of the hygiene department. So, I mean, I love the idea, like you said, of keeping it simple with everything they have going on to be able to give quick, concise answers, to the practice owner of kind of where the program is, what's working, what's not, how they can build training around that. Especially in a lot of cases, as you know, where there's newer hygienists coming in and out of the practice. In many cases, they're responsible for that whole hiring process. So they're going to know their practice, right? They're going to know the health of the practice. I've always seen traditionally, a 70-30 restorative to hygiene rate, right? I mean, you hear
Yep.
that kind of that general number to where, okay, if hygiene is maybe only 15% of the practice or 10% of the practice, what are some things that the practice can do, and vice versa, where I've seen numbers as high as hygiene is 40. And although some people think that's great, like, is that really right? There could be doing more restorative work being done. So it's just such a nice way, like you mentioned, to keep it simple, and build the health of that practice around the hygiene schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said at the beginning, the hygiene program is the gateway to the practice, right? And that's where the patients spend the most time. That's where a lot of diagnosis comes from, on the restorative side, right? That experience has to be fantastic. And really what should happen is if you have patients coming in the door, new patients coming in the door on a regular basis, ultimately, if we're running a really great hygiene program, our hygiene program should continue to grow, and we should be adding hygiene columns over time to be able to meet those needs. So the question is what's happening with our hygiene program? Is it that 30%? It's kind of a magic number, 30% of total production, and is it growing? If it's not growing, the average practice loses about 7%, anywhere from 7 to 10% of their patient base every year.
Mhm.
And so are we replacing that? Are we making sure that patients are coming back in? And really, it really starts with that hygiene program. It's so vital to the success of the practice as a whole, even though it's only responsible for 30% of the
Right.
production.
Yeah, no question. It drives so much, not to mention the great work that the hygienists do to educate the patients on the importance of their perio health, like you mentioned, and all of that. So this has been great. All right, so we'd love to have you share with everybody. We actually have a question. So do you have a link to the best fluoride information to be able to advise patients the need for this? One of the questions.
That is a fantastic question, and I will make sure that gets back to you guys and gets published. There is a paper out there. I have a doctor friend who has been working with his hygiene team to educate them on the importance of fluoride, and so I'll track that down and get you the link and find out exactly where that is.
Excellent. And then, what we can do, everybody, is we'll just go ahead and put that link right in the comments thread right for this live, which will be on the ADOM Facebook page. Also, the ADOM team just posted a link, more information about practice analytics, so they can go to the site, Jeff, and learn more. But any other ways that they can get in touch with you? Any other thoughts you can give on the best way for people to learn more about the great work you guys are doing?
Yeah, the best way is to give us a call. Go to practiceanalytics.com, give us a call, and just spend 10 minutes with us on the phone. Just let's go through a really quick demo, show you what we can do, show you how easy it is, and I promise you guys, it's going to make your life so much better to be able to have control over what's happening in your hygiene program in a very easy and simple to use way.
Perfect. Well, Jeff, thanks so much. This has been awesome. You got tons of energy, obviously very apparent that you love what you do. And I'm sure, as these practices continue to use these great tools and they grow their programs and patients are getting healthy, that's what it's all about. So the ADOM team really, really appreciate you coming on today, learning more about your great company. And we hope to see you soon, as we've been telling everybody, at a meeting somewhere, right? Hopefully we can all get back to live meetings and people can get to engage again. But in the meantime, we've got this. Such a great platform to get these great resources and information out to the ADOM members. So thanks for your time, Jeff. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it.